this Florida Derby day, remember to sign up with DRF Bets.
Hey everyone, I'm David Aragona, and this is the TimeformUS Road to the Derby series. Things are starting to get serious on the Kentucky Derby Trail. We've got 3 prep races this weekend that are all offering 100 Derby qualifying points to the winner. In this video, we're going to take a look at one of those races. It is the Grade 3 Jeff Ruby Stakes at Turfway Park, racing over that synthetic Tapeta surface there. So some horses that will try to transfer synthetic form when they qualify to dirt in the Kentucky Derby. It's a pretty competitive field, a lot of questions to be answered by these horses. Let's throw up the array of horses that are entered for this race. There are 12 of them. The favorite on the morning line is the number 7, Tarantino. He's a lukewarm favorite of 3-1 over some horses that have been competing in the local prep races, led by the number 2, Hush of a Storm, who is the second choice on the morning line. Before we get into the contenders, though, let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector for this race. As you see, the second page of runners with Gretzky the Great also in here at 5-1, the third choice. The horse that's projected to be on the lead in the TimeformUS pace projector is the number 8, Moonlight Strike. I suppose his connections might decide to get aggressive with him, but there are some other horses that are projected to be close up that I think could seize the day and take it to that horse on the front end, including the number 7, Tarantino, who is that favorite, who has some tactical speed as well. The number 1, Like the King, has shown some speed in prior starts, but the number 10, Gretzky the Great, is the one that I would personally expect to see forwardly placed in here, potentially outright on the lead by himself, given how much speed he showed last time in the John Battaglia Memorial. But some others in here that are in behind those, like the number 11, Dynamite, has plenty of tactical speed, as does the number 12, Hockey Dad. Both of those horses breaking from outside post. They'll probably want to get forward to establish some position and get closer to the rail by the time they enter that clubhouse turn. So I agree with the TimeformUS pace projector. This does seem like a race that could feature a pretty quick pace up front. Moving into the contenders, that aforementioned morning line favorite is the number 7, Tarantino. And I'm not going to pretend to be some guru of synthetic surfaces. I don't do that much synthetic handicapping myself. I'll admit that right off the top. But one thing I do know about synthetic races, and just a philosophy that I generally like to apply, is that I don't like to take short prices on horses that have never tried a synthetic surface before. And that's the case with the Tarantino. He's definitely coming in with the best form, having finished second to Greatest Honor 2 back. And we'll actually take a look at that race when he was second in the Grade 3 Holy Bull back in January. He runs well here. His Greatest Honor has already taken over this race by the time they come off the far turn, but Tarantino's back in second now, and he's going to dig in pretty gamely to hang on to that runner-up spot by the time they come onto the wire. He definitely is a horse who's been improving in subsequent starts as a 3-year-old, but he also improved on the dirt. Now, he handled the turf early in his career, actually won a couple of races over it, and while he's lost his last 2 dirt races, you see that his TimeformUS speed figures have actually improved quite a bit on the dirt. So the inclination might be to say, well, he handles turf, he handles dirt, so why not a third surface, synthetic? I suppose that might be true, but there are other horses in this race that have to answer that synthetic question for the first time, and they'll be much bigger prices. And I just think given the overall variability with the form of this race and the uncertainty around a horse like Tarantino trying it for the first time, I'd rather take a big price on a horse that has that question to answer than a short price. So I respect Tarantino's talent, just not sure this is the right race in which to bet him. Moving on to some other contenders in this race, we'll look at 3 horses that are coming out of the local prep for this, the John Battaglia Memorial, which was run at Turfway Park at the end of February. First, we'll take a look at Hush of a Storm, the number 2. He's the second choice on the morning line, going out for William Morey. He's won 3 races in a row, all on that synthetic surface at Turfway. Obviously, his last effort, though, was the best of those 3, where he beat a few of today's rivals in that John Battaglia. I thought he got a pretty good trip that day. You see those red color-coded pace figures indicating that the pace was pretty quick up front, and he was off the pace, making a wide, prolonged run into the race, coming around the far turn. And he got there in mid-stretch and had no trouble seeing up the mile in the 16th distance, was really finishing best of all at the end of that race. So I think stretching out to a mile and an eighth is not going to pose much of a problem for him at all. If he gets another quick pace to close into, that's going to work in his favor. I'm not against him in any sense, but he's also going to be among the shorter prices in this race. And as I said at the top, I think this is a race where you might want to do some searching for a bit of value. So I'm just not sure he's going to offer that, but he is certainly a horse that I would use underneath. couple other horses that I think you might want to take a look at from that John Battaglia are the number 10, Gretzky the Great, who was actually the pace setter in that race. You see those red color-coded pace figures. He was the one that was carving out those fractions on the front end, and he finished up pretty well to be third there. That 109 TimeformUS speed figure got some pace bonus from the fact that he was setting those quick fractions up front, actually a bigger number than Hush of a Storm got in winning that race. And Gretzky the Great also took a few bumps through the stretch. It was kind of a roughly run stretch drive. There was an inquiry into the stretch run as Hush of a Storm was drifting in a bit at the end, bumped into Like the King, who in turn bumped into Gretzky the Great. I don't think it would cost that horse the victory, and that's why there was no change there. But I still think Gretzky the Great put in a good effort. First time off a layoff, coming back in his first start as a 3-year-old, and he had good, solid turf form from last year. Actually was the winner of the Grade 1 Summer, put in a decent effort in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. So while I'm not viewing him as a real Kentucky Derby candidate in a dirt race, I think this might be a good fit for him, this Jeff Ruby Stakes, from a class standpoint. And if he gets the distance and is able to withstand some pace pressure, he makes a lot of sense here. So he's definitely one that I would use. The horse that some people might be tempted to take out of the John Battaglia is the number 9, Hard Rye Guy, because he had some obvious trouble in the stretch of that race. Chris Landeros was making a run coming around the far turn, closing into the same quick pace that Hush of a Storm was closing into, but he elected to go down towards the rail coming to the top of the stretch and tried to sneak through an opening on the inside, and he was involved in that inquiry as they came to the stretch, as Hush of a Storm drifted over down towards the inside and caused some crowding down towards the rail. Hard Rye Guy had to steady out of that position and alter course around horses to come on at the end. I don't think he was ever winning that race. Arguably could have been in the money if not for that trouble. But he was still a horse that was just picking up pieces. And I mean, you could say that he might have been finished closer if not for the trouble. But if so, he would have done it with a perfect trip, closing into a quick pace and still not been able to beat Hush of a Storm. So I'm not sure that I want to bet him in this race, given that he could be a similar price to a horse like Gretzky the Great. So I prefer the other horses coming out of the John Battaglia rather than Hard Rye Guy. Though I do want to search for some bigger prices in this race, some less obvious horses, some horses that are trying synthetic for the first time, but will beat prices in doing so. And one of those is the number 8, Moonlight Strike. He's actually the horse that was shown on the lead in the TimeformUS pace projector. I don't really care whether he's in front or not because he's been proficient stalking in the past. But Moonlight Strike is a horse that I think is a little bit interesting off his third place finish last time out in the Tampa Bay Derby. Let's take a look at the replay of that race as they come through the stretch. Not the fastest Derby prep in the world. Helium won this race coming off some synthetic form and didn't get the most flashy speed figure in victory. But I thought that Moonlight Strike, who you see in that orange cap, is coming on for third now. He stays on reasonably well at the end of this race, rebounded nicely from a poor effort in the Smarty Jones prior to this. He's going to have to run faster if he's to win the Jeff Ruby Stakes, but I'm intrigued by this horse getting on synthetic surface for the first time. He's by Liam's Map, who has, albeit not sired too many horses that have tried synthetic, but he has had plenty of success on turf with his progeny, and sometimes turf form does translate to synthetic surfaces. But on the dam side, Moonlight Strike really has more of a turf pedigree than dirt pedigree. His dam was best on turf in her brief career, and his dam's also a half-sister to a stakes-placed runner on the turf. So there is real pedigree for Moonlight Strike to handle the turf. Can that proficiency or supposed proficiency on the turf carry over to synthetic? Well, I'm not sure about it, but he's 12-1 on the morning line. I could see him drifting up even higher than that because Safi Joseph has a few runners in this field that look a little bit difficult to separate, and Moonlight Strike is the one of those that I vastly prefer to the others. So I think he's interesting at a price in this race. My top pick, though, at an even bigger price potentially, is the number 11, Dynamite, who's 15-1 in the morning line. Kind of like Moonlight Strike, he's a horse that's never tried synthetic before, but he's been proficient on both dirt and turf in the past. And his recent speed figures have been trending in the right direction. I think he might be a horse that's just rounding into form and coming into this race the right way. Let's take a look at the race that he ran 2 back in that Texas Turf Mile at Sam Houston. He's ranging up on the outside of the leader right now in those light blue silks, and he's pretty game in this race because he gets on terms with that leader. Looks like he's going to hang a little bit, but then horses range up outside of him and look like they're going to run right past him. But Dynamite battles back pretty gamely all the way to the wire, just misses in the end, finishing a very close third, losing by only a neck. I thought this horse showed a lot of grit and determination there, and we saw even more of that last time out when he came back in the black gold at the fairgrounds. Very similar trip that day, stalking on the outside, took the race over, looked like the winner was going to blow by him in the stretch, but Dynamite really battled back gamely onto the wire to just lose by a nose. He got a 104 TimeformUS speed figure for that race. That's pretty solid for a turf router as a 3-year-old at this time of year, and if he can take another step forward, given that he's been improving in all of his starts since the end of last year, I think he fits pretty well in this race. Also, he's going out for Keith DeSormo, who, while he doesn't start many horses on synthetic surfaces, he has run a number of horses on the synthetic surface up at Golden Gate, which is a Tapeta surface, just like Turfway Park. So given that Keith DeSormo has somewhat an idea of what kind of horses handle that Tapeta surface, maybe he's got an inkling that this might be the right surface for Dynamite. So I'm going to take a shot with number 11, Dynamite. Hopefully we'll see if the trip works out. I know there's a lot of speed in this race, and he's one of those, but he's drawn outside of it, so I'm hoping he can get the right kind of stalking trip. He's my top pick at 15-1. I'm using him over the number 8, Moonlight Strike, who's also a price, as well as the number 2, Hush of a Storm, who's coming out of that John Battaglia Memorial, and the number 10, Gretzky the Great, out of the same race. He was the pace setter there. He'll likely set the pace again in this Jeff Ruby Stakes. So that's a look at the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Dynamite for me, the number 11 in this race at Turfway Park on Saturday.